Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So do you guys remember this video here? If you don't, it's okay. Basically, what was happening was Russia confirmed that they were launching a BRICS currency backed by gold. It will be on the agenda at the BRICS South Africa meeting in August. Many other countries have applied to join BRICS. De-dollarization is accelerating. Now, you might say, well, this sounds interesting. Or if you do remember, this video, then you know that this was going all the way back to 2023. Now, what's interesting about this is that we have been hearing these headline articles about this BRICS currency for years, literally years. And everyone is wondering what's actually going on with the BRICS. What exactly are they doing? Now, there was a more updated video that got posted yesterday. And big shout out to Subjective Views. We have CIA operative says BRICS will soon launch a digital currency backed by gold. Check this out. This is the Tether CEO.
Our growth means a huge growth for the US dollar hegemony, pushing against the activity of the BRICS countries that really want to have a world that is de-dollarized.
Interesting. Explain that more, how the US dollar, it sounds like, could benefit from this.
Well, we are out there, we are building kiosks in Africa, we are building bodegas in Central South America. We have millions of touch points around the world where the US is not present. So we are in villages in Africa, we are in villages in Central South America, in Asia, and our activity there is actually educating people on how to hold a digital dollar. And if you are in these countries, in these communities, you see a huge pushback from the BRICS nations that want to push their own currencies, or soon they will launch a digital currency backed by gold. And plus, they are building infrastructure in the emerging markets, and so the intent of the BRICS nations is very open. They said it multiple times. They want a dollar that is less stable, more weak. They want to de-dollarize the entire communities out there, and we are pushback against that. We are the stronghold that prevents that from happening with hundreds of millions of users. I think that Tether is the best ally for the United States in that sense because we are doing a great service.
So yeah, I mean, listen, how would he know this exactly? But what's more interesting about this is that we know that they have been, planning to launch this digital currency backed by gold for a very long time. A lot of people called it a CBDC. A lot of people called it a stablecoin. We don't know when this is going to happen. We don't know if it's going to happen. We don't know exactly what the BRICS are planning, but we know that it is something big, okay? We know that they've been moving on this de-dollarization effort for a very long time. We've been focused on it since going all the way back to like March of 2022. During that time, also, by the way, we got a big executive order in the US to actually look into a CBDC. That kind of shifted to a stablecoin, which at the end of the day, are they extremely different? Not exactly. They both have programmability tied to it. They both have control mechanisms tied to it. So at the end of the day, a stablecoin and a CBDC, very similar, just completely different names. But I will say this. He is talking about how Tether could save the US dollar. I would actually counter that with RLUSD. We know that Ripple has been absolutely killing the game, and we know that Ripple has been completely, tied back to these major government agencies and organizations for a very long time. We also know that Ripple has been paving a way to the institutional sector in a huge way. Not to mention that Ripple was in the same room as the US Secretary of Treasury, planning around, tapping into stablecoin initiatives. I think Subjective Views actually was the one that posted that. Yeah, it was back here. This was with the US Department of the Treasury. This is Nellie Liang, Undersecretary for Domestic Finance, US Department of Treasury, with Ripple and Stellar. And this was actually around the integration of CBDCs, tokenization, and even stablecoins into the broader US financial ecosystem. And this is basically to modernize the US financial system as a whole. And yet Tether was not there. In fact, the only other stablecoin, player there was Circle. So I do find it interesting that, Tether CEO is saying like, oh, well, Tether is the best one in class to actually, support the US financial system and the US dollar as a currency. So why wouldn't they, tap into Tether? Well, I know why they wouldn't tap into Tether. It's because of the regulatory scrutiny that Tether does have tied to it. But on top of that, the BRICS definitely are a big focus from my point of view because they have been, a big player in terms of GDP growth. They've also been stockpiling massive amounts of gold since going all the way back to like 2008. And we actually have here BRICS versus the dollar. BRICS nations want to shake up global trade. USD's share in global trade fell from 88% in 2010 to 77% in 2023. This is actually from the IMF. Gold reserves in BRICS nations up 25%. De-dollarization talk is real, but can they pull it off? Watch gold and Forex reserves closely. Now, this is that growth rate of the BRICS gold reserves, and we do see the de-dollarization trend itself. This is something that's happening in real time, and it's basically the death of 1,000 cuts for the US dollar. But the question is, how do we reinforce the dollar? How do we stop this from becoming a big, serious problem? Well, it is tapping into stablecoins, number one. Number two is getting behind, digital currencies and digital asset technology. And we already start to see, the big picture being painted by players like, for example, Congress. I mean, the Financial Services GOP recently did have the Stable Act passed, and this was a regulatory framework for payment stablecoins that will protect innovation and consumers. And we even have the, statements here around what they want to do with this, which I did, include in a video previously. But this is also happening at a time where the SEC just declared fully reserved liquid dollar-backed crypto stablecoins are not securities. So now we're starting to see an accelerated push on stablecoins in a big way in the US. And just to kind of summarize what this really means, we have here from Miles Jennings, the SEC Gov just released excellent guidance on stablecoins, clearly identifying where they fall outside the scope of securities laws. While the guidance mostly focuses on centrally issued stablecoins, there are some implications for decentralized stablecoins. In particular, the SEC Howey and Reeves analysis can easily apply to decentralized stablecoins, meaning that where decentralized stablecoins aren't marketed as investments and otherwise meet the criteria outlined in the guidance, they should similarly fall outside the bounds of securities laws. The SEC's emphasis on the potential for interest payments to turn stablecoins from a consumer product into an investment product under both the Howey and Reeves test makes sense, particularly in the context of centrally issued and controlled stablecoins. Now, he also does go on to say that doesn't mean that the decentralized stablecoins that pay interest are automatically securities, though, and he really kind of just explains this in terms of, how it's made to generate the yield to pay interest. Everything is handled via decentralized smart contracts that aren't controlled by anyone. As such, they do not satisfy Howey. Decentralized stablecoins that pay interest also shouldn't satisfy Reeves, where there is no issuer raising money for the general use of a business enterprise or to finance substantial investments, and where reserves are adequately funded to fully satisfy redemptions on demand. Further, a lack of control over the smart contracts and reserve that underpin stablecoin, i.e. decentralization, substantially reduces the risk associated with the stablecoin. As a result, I read the guidance as leaving open the possibility that the SEC believes truly decentralized stablecoins don't trigger securities laws, even when they pay interest. Finally, the guidance is broadly consistent with the Genius and Stable Act. Moving through Congress, both bills prohibit payment of interest to ensure stablecoins are not investment products, which justifies the exclusion from securities laws for stablecoins included in both bills. So at the end of the day, the US is starting to accelerate, regulatory frameworks around stablecoins, because at the end of the day, they also want to integrate stablecoins. They want to utilize stablecoins to not only support the US dollar as a whole, but also to keep the US dollar the reserve currency. This is a tech war. Whoever wins this tech war around digital assets and digital currencies and, the technology around the space will ultimately, reap the rewards. They will benefit greatly. It will be like Silicon Valley 2.0. Which is why the US is trying to get this right. The US is trying to push on this, and the US is going to start to, in my opinion, partner up with some big players from the space. It could be Tether, it could be Ripple, it could be Circle. We don't know. But one thing that's very clear to me is that Ripple has very, very significant connections to the government. We know that Ripple has been working with the BIS, for example, with the CPMI group, which is also promoting the harmonization of APIs for enhancing cross-border payments. This is actually instructed by the G20. We also know that the BIS has been really pushing on around the Finternet, aka the Internet of Value. Essentially, it's the future financial system. And the CPMI group is the same CPMI group that Ripple is a part of. And even if you go to Ripple's website, We have modernized your financial infrastructure, aka modernize your financial system, because we know at the end of the day, everything that Ripple is planning and doing does include, tapping into tokenization, tapping into institutional DeFi, tapping into stablecoins, revolutionizing payments, how money is sent and received. At the end of the day, when we really think about what's happening here, Ripple has everything on lock. They have all of the connections, they have all the partnerships, they have all of the tech stack that they need to have in place in order to not only make efficient any payment system, but also modernize any financial system. If we're thinking about a best-in-class player to tap into for the US dollar and for the US financial system, I'm not immediately thinking Tether. And it's not because I'm biased. I'm thinking about Ripple. I'm thinking about RLUSD. Because Ripple has been on this mission for well over a decade, and they are the best in class around this. But on top of that, we continue to hear about stablecoins and how they can cement the US dollar as the backbone of global finance, even from Paxos. Check this out.
98% of transactions that are happening in the crypto-related space are happening against US dollars. Of course, that doesn't always need to be the case in the future. And if the US has not set a clear framework, that does open up the possibility for other nations and other types of currencies to gain not just a foothold, but even a predominance, which of course would be problematic for the United States.
Now, on top of that, we also have this, right? This is David Sachs back in February talking about stablecoins, how they have the potential to ensure the US dollar dominance internationally.
Stablecoins really have the potential to ensure American dollar dominance internationally, to increase the usage of the US dollar digitally as the world's reserve currency, and in the process create potentially trillions of dollars of demand for US treasuries, which could lower long-term interest rates. Stablecoins really have the...
And then last but not least, we also have from Brian Steele, stablecoins give us an opportunity to continue US dollar dominance across the globe.
I believe that stablecoins in particular give us a real opportunity to maintain dollar dominance across the globe. We've talked a little bit about use cases, and as a policymaker in general, I might not be concerned about the way that someone in Mexico, Panama, Peru, Nigeria, or another location is engaged in transactions. But what we actually see is when Stripe has a neobank in Mexico, or Bridge is used to distribute payments to workers across Latin America, that actually strengthens the US dollar. Would you agree? Can you comment on that briefly?
Yes, I think it strengthens the US in two ways. One, many of the companies engaged in the activity you're describing are themselves American businesses, and so they become stronger. But secondly, and I think this is what your question is getting at, it increases dollar demand, it increases the demand for US treasuries, and it in turn lowers US borrowing costs.
I believe that stablecoin...
So this is a growing trend. We are now starting to see the big shift around stablecoins, and we know exactly why it's happening at this moment. It's because for well over, a few years now, the BRICS have been making substantial moves around separating themselves from the US dollar and the US financial system. When we think about SWIFT and we think about the US dollar as a whole, BRICS nations have been cutting ties. And it is working. It's a long-term game here, but it's working. It's happening. So the best way to reinforce this is by being first to this tech race, being first to really start to not only integrate it, but utilize it at scale. Because if this does happen, and if they actually do start to integrate stablecoins, and the stablecoin usage grows significantly, it expands massively, then we will see the US dollar cement as the reserve currency for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years. But this is happening now, right? Like, we're starting to see the legislation push. We're starting to see, the adoption of stablecoins and the growth of stablecoins growing rapidly. I think the last time that we looked at yearly growth for the stablecoins, it was like well over $12 trillion. I think right now we should be focused on the stablecoin issuers. I think that we should be focused on Ripple. I think that we should be focused on the underlying networks that these stablecoins are issued out on, because stablecoins are not slowing down. This entire space is not slowing down. Technology waits for no one. So now we are going to see over the next few months some of the biggest moves being made to clear any obstacle in the way of these technologies, of these digital assets, so that they could actually be adopted, utilized, and integrated within the financial system as a whole. And I think companies like Ripple and digital assets like XRP are going to experience a massive amount of growth, a significant amount of value, and also we are going to see the integration of these tech stacks happening in real time in a big way. And I do think that it all starts with, the problem, the reaction, the solution. And I think the BRICS are definitely a big focus here. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely have a like, subscribe, so notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.